Hi all. Before you start, be sure to put your thumbs up under the video and write a comment. Enjoy watching. So, this manhwa begins with the most interesting events. Namely, from a fierce battle between warriors and demons from another world. 3 warriors appear before us. One of them is the strongest on earth, thanks to him all the demons can be defeated very quickly. But after the fight, a violent malevolent energy was felt. As it turns out, Dokbae, as well as the main character of this work, meant his 2 partners in this battle. They were grateful for his help in the battle, but just as jealous of his power. Therefore, when Dokbae felt this, he recognized something impure in their eyes. Considering their unpleasant essences, the protagonist rather rudely reacted to their gratitude, which actually started a quarrel between them. They claim that they allegedly have no personal animosity towards him, but intend to take the life of Dokbae for the peace of mind of a certain Muram, because so far this character has not been revealed. Dokbae is 100% sure of his victory. Because he, as the most powerful warrior on earth, can afford to be arrogant at least in this situation. So, the battle begins with the fact that the attacking warriors, apparently, did not even hear how to clamp the enemy in pincers and left Dokbae a gap for the attack. In general, by this stupidity, one can already understand which side the victory is on. But everything can change at any moment, so we are watching the fight further. One of the attackers chooses the Thunder Lance technique and, with all his might, directs his spear towards Dokbae. The same one sarcastically says some kind of noisy and tedious technique of working with lances. Scared to the core. The spear is getting closer and closer to the neck of the main and the hero, and at the very last moment, when the already attacking warrior has tasted this sweetness of victory, Dokbae stops his weapon with 2 fingers. The expressions on the faces of the attackers were simply indescribable. All their hopes of victory vanished in an instant. But the second warrior still tried to inflict damage with his technique called 9 Tiger Fists. Dokbae still called this blow powerful, but still managed to cope with it. The 2 warriors were very angry and decided to attack 1 by 2, although by all the rules of the battle, this is completely unfair. But Dokbae easily fought them off and further provoked the young masters to show their full power. The warriors were completely lacking strength and they were exhausted, which cannot be said about our strongest hero. He joked about them all the time and didn't take them seriously. He was just not interested in fighting them. The 2 thugs were so discouraged by his tenacity that they started talking about him being a monster because a human can't be that strong. Especially since Dokbae won all these battles without any auxiliary items, namely weapons. While they were indignant and spoke badly, our main character suddenly noticed a scratch on his little finger, and immediately his furious anger set in. Shouting, he asked them how they dared to leave a mark on the body of the great Dokbae. And now the games are over, the real fight begins. The main character, unexpectedly for everyone, takes out a sword from somewhere, which was not even sharpened. Killing 2 young masters in one fell swoop. Although it was the most basic attack, it's strange that they couldn't defend themselves. After that, we can observe Dokbae 10 years later, he has already grown old, and he was still bored on this earth. Sitting under a waterfall, he thought that at the very beginning he took up a sword, only to survive. Feeding from the floor like an animal and spinning his sword endlessly. He became a vagabond, went around the world and saw many masters. And all, as one. More than once he found himself on the edge of life and death, but he was able to become even stronger. Back then no one could stop him. He was the only one unsurpassed and because of this he could dominate. However, he is mired in the viscous emptiness, and to get out of the emptiness and madness that envelops him. He came to this wonderful and pure place under the waterfall, and in the end he himself found the answer. Dokbae has reached a level that can no longer be raised on earth. Martial arts are over, now I have to become a celestial to reach the highest degree. At this moment, the spirit of Dokbae disconnects from his body and, with all his might, flies straight up to heaven. With full confidence that he has already become a celestial being, but here he meets 8 heads on the way, which loudly told him to stop. In fact, this and there were already existing celestials. Dokbae got used to the fact that no one had ever defeated him in this life, and therefore began to communicate too boldly with the heavenly inhabitants, saying such phrases as "Wow, you heavenly inhabitants, you decided to appear so noisily, did you all decide to greet me? All I see is huge hanging heads. Anyway, I'm pleased, my name is Ha Hu Young, I'm a new celestial which, of course, angered the spirits. They felt very bad energy from their intruder, it was felt that there was a lot of anger in him, the whole body was saturated with the energy of death. The main character was just furious. He hadn't heard any refusals for many years, and if he did, he solved all his questions by force, but there were ordinary people on Earth, and now the strongest spirits are in front of him. All 8 Celestials were against the entry of a new candidate, but they also gave him another chance, but for this, he will definitely need to cleanly wash away the sins of the past. Doc Bay was naturally furious at this decision and started yelling, "I've been through so much to come up here, how can you change your mind like that?" In an orderly tone, he told the spirits to stop talking nonsense and immediately make room for him. Since Doc Bay did not understand any words and spoke in a very disrespectful tone, the Celestials had to go to extreme measures and drive the ignoramus away by force. The first spirit tried to wash it off with the power of water, but it was a very weak blow, and Doc Bay managed to go back. Then another Celestial who wielded the power of fire launched a huge burning ball into him, and an explosion occurred. But surprisingly, even this could not break the stubborn warrior Doc Bay. Returning again, the stubborn decided to express himself very ugly in the direction of the youngest spirit, telling him the following phrase. Now any little thing is a celestial being, and the main character received the strongest answer to this. That spirit spat at him with all his might. This saliva was so huge that it swallowed Doc Bay completely and completely. He could not even take a breath. Everything in his eyes darkened. He could hardly say the last phrases. These are crazy celestials. How dare you dump me? You definitely hit the wrong one, I will definitely be back. So, slowly regaining consciousness, Doc Bay sees the silhouette of some girl who is glad that he woke up because she was very worried and frightened by his condition. Doc Bay does not understand at all where he is and what is happening to him. These were his 2 main questions. Seeing his white and plump hands, he immediately decided to go to the mirror and saw there not his reflection at all. A reincarnation occurred in the mirror. There was a thin guy with cute features. In one word, he looked like a kissing boy. The main character was so shocked that he fell in the middle of the ward and began to cry. That girl was no less surprised by such a reaction and ran up to the guy. Here they met. Her name is Jum Chom-san. She helps her son and the young master of the Nam-gun family. The guy is just incredibly surprised and asks who is he all the same and what is he doing here. The girl said that he is the second son of the Nam-gong family and his name is Gun Hayek. The guy was more and more shocked. Jum Chom-sang even got a little angry because she thought that Gong Hayek was laughing at her because it can't be that he lost his creation and lost his memory. This is almost impossible. Then the protagonist asks what time they are in. It turns out that in the 70th year, after all, 70 years have passed since the founding of the Chongqian Union. Gong Hayek thought about the fact that he decided to climb in a past life a little after 90 years, but it turned out to be unsuccessful, and he fell, and suddenly 60 years flew by unnoticed. In this case, it turns out that his real age is now more than 150 years. Now he was reborn and became the son of the Namgun family. Inside the steam room, Doc Bay is blazing with rage, cursing the Celestials. They not only returned him to where he was, but also decided to teach him a lesson. The protagonist was very upset and confused, but rather quickly pulled himself together and said the following phrase. You should not lose heart because of this. Even though I have a different body, my memories and experience are still with me. But he is really right. No matter what form we are in, if our brain remains with us, then our personality will not disappear anywhere. His personality is very full of endurance and purposefulness, so he did not doubt for a minute that he would also cope with this test. The first thing Gong Hayek decided to do was to escape from his hospital room and find out as much as possible about his new self. At the exit, of course, security was waiting for him, and the first thing he wanted to do was kill, but something stopped him. The thought popped up in his head that this was still the first day of rebirth. You need to be careful and still try to improve. In fact, such prudence of the protagonist is very pleasing, but it is not at all a fact that he will continue to behave this way. Gong Hayek thinks to quickly run past the guards. As soon as he intends to make a dash, he realizes that it is not as easy as it was before, and he needs to get used to the new body. He stood for a bit, felt himself and seemed to understand everything, again trying to make a jerk, and hears a very sharp sound, like breaking bones, and looking down, he understands that it was his own leg. With all his strength, Gong Hayek shouted for help. The doctor and Kyum Chom-san immediately caught on and gave the guy the help he needed. After the cast was applied, the doctor told Gong Hayek that he was too weak and fragile like crystal, so you need to take care of yourself and not make rash jumps. The guy was angry and constantly argued with the doctor because he could not get used to him being so gentle now. Poor Jung Chom-san started crying because she was worried about the health of her ward and said that if he dies, then she will die from the torment of guilt. Then the girl and the doctor unanimously began to force Gong Hek to drink medicine and at the same time a decoction. It was also necessary to listen to all the prescriptions, and here the guy's nerves simply could not stand it. He kicked the doctor and started screaming loudly, so much so that everyone immediately left his room. Left alone in the ward, Gong Hyuk began to meditate to find out what was wrong with this body and why it was so fragile. Many thoughts come into his head, and one of them is just the same as the answer to his question 9. Yin energy flows, an incurable disease in which all flows are clogged. Usually, in such diseases, people are very susceptible to death at an early age. Gong Hyuk comes out of meditation and again becomes angrier than a dog. How can it be that Dak Bae, who was harder than a rock, fell asleep in a body as fragile as a crystal and with streams completely clogged inside? He swears that he will take revenge on the spirits, and this will happen much earlier than they can imagine. In such a hysterical state, Gong Hyuk waves everything he can, even despite the bitter experience with his leg. And again hears the familiar sound of breaking bones. Oh, it was his hand. How the main character, being in such a terrible body, will act further, we can see in the next parts.